All right. Thanks everybody for coming. I guess I'm already. It's I was told the discussion topic was agricultural economics at Texas A&M University, a shared vision and administrative philosophy. I've got about 19 slides that I'm going to try to run through, and I'll try to keep it to somewhere between a half an hour and 45 minutes. I've got a little bit of an outline here. I want to start off with a little bit about Texas A&M, the land-grant mission, the purpose, the Department of Ag Economics, and how it fits within that. I'll then go to a little bit of kind of start talking about vision, but really talk a little bit about some of our recent reviews, our internal review and the external review, because we need to think a little bit about kind of where we are in our history if we're going to talk about where we're going to head and what we're going to do a little differently. Then I'll kind of carry that forward with vision, talk a little bit about my administrative philosophy, how I do things as the associate head for extension, how I would do things as the department head. I'll talk a little bit about funding in our future, some opportunities, and I'm not sure there's a whole lot new there necessarily, but some things that we may want to rethink about, some opportunities, some strengths that we already have that I think we can expand on, and some other opportunities. And then I'll talk a little bit about my qualifications, what I've done since I've been here, both as an extension economist and over the last 7 years as the associate head for extension. And then I guess we'll have some time for some questions. I'll start off, as I said, with kind of a purpose or a mission of the land-grant system. In 1862, we had the passage of the Morrill Act that kind of laid the groundwork for the democratization of public higher education. It largely grew out of, and it's important to think about the situation that we were in at the time, it grew out of our industrialized society's increasingly complex problems, deficiencies, demands. If you look at some of the discussion, the history of how it came about, there's a lot of discussion of we were expanding west, we were settling land, we had an increasing growing agriculture, we also had an industrial revolution going on. We had large industrial firms and factories and wealth being created and held in relatively small hands, and you saw discussions of 1% and 99%, which isn't a whole lot different than we have today. We still have, while it's not an industrial revolution, we've offshored a lot of industrial jobs. We continue to see our economy change. We have different educational requirements, not only for the students who are coming through now, but for former students, for folks who haven't gone to school, who are looking at different kinds of jobs and how things change. So I think it's the mission, the purpose of the land-grant system is as important today as it's ever been. And I think that's part of the reason, or I think it's neat, one of the people who came in for our external review, one of our external reviewers, commented on the fact that, and I apologize for this being just a tad bit crooked, but I took the picture with my iPhone while I was preparing my slides. I ran downstairs. You see this sign downstairs across from the elevators if you come off the elevator that says the land-grant university system is being built on behalf of the people who have invested in these public universities their hopes, their support, and their confidence. And that was a quote from Abraham Lincoln when he signed that legislation. And I think it's important for us to keep that in mind and as we think about what we are and who we are. I also just wanted to briefly mention that there's a lot of legislation that was involved in the land-grant system and has been part of the land-grant system's development over time, but just to mention 3 of those because they mention the 3 functions that we largely perform. The Morrill Act in '62 that was signed by Lincoln basically established the land-grant system and built those teaching structures. And as we started educating, we realized, those institutions realized that they needed to provide research that was going to make that education more meaningful. Because it was largely industrial and it was largely agricultural, a lot of that research, especially from an agricultural standpoint, needed to be regionalized because we've got different climates, different regions, different crop zones, different crops. And so they needed some research that would apply more to people in those states and regions. And so in 1887, about 25 years after the Morrill Act, we got the Hatch Act, which created our research experiment stations. of which AgriLife Research is now that component. In 1914, then we had the Smith-Lever Act, which essentially brought in extension and said, let's figure out a way to carry that education to the rest of the populace. There are a lot of people that would argue that the land-grant system is probably one of the best examples of government investment that we've ever seen, and what it did to expand and build on the human capital of this country and really be able to move us forward, build a middle class, educate our populations. We could move away from having 1 or 2% of the population educated in a university system and to a much larger portion of our population. If we move to where the university's mission is in more recent years, its mission of excellence, we can go back to the Vision 2020 document. In 97 to 99, Dr. Ray Bowen commissioned a group to get together and think about where our university was headed in the future. In the fall of 2010, Dr. Lofton, President Lofton, gave us kind of a midterm report talking about creating a culture of excellence and serving the public good, and where we had come, what kind of progress we had made, and how we might go about measuring some of that. And that's part of our issue even within our own department, is how do we measure what we are? They talked in Vision 2020 about being one of the 10 best public universities in the nation by 2020. How do we measure that? How do we figure that out? And being an invaluable resource to the state, the nation, and the world. To carry that a step further, we look at the College of Ag and Life Sciences 2010-2015 strategic plan. If we look at the imperatives within there, they talk about elevating our faculty, our teaching, our research, and our scholarship, strengthening our graduate programs, enhancing our undergraduate experience, and building and engaging connections beyond the university. Well, then we can kind of move from there, from the university's vision, from what we're doing at the college level, to where we are in the department. I'm getting ahead of my own slides here. If we look at the department's stated vision, mission, and goals are well aligned with the land-grant mission. If we look at our desire, and we continue to hear ourselves talk about we want to attain a top 10 ranking, that matches up well with the university's vision. We want to have a really good department. We do question a lot of times how good we are. There are a lot of different ways to rate things out there. And if you just look at publications, or you look at publications, you look at faculty or student funding, you look at grants coming in, look at certain kinds of grants, we may not match up as well as when people start to look at our overall programs and what our whole department is. We are good, we understand that we're good, but we know there's room for improvement. We do need to think about how we measure our relative position and our progress, how we're moving forward. Are we making progress? And as Tom Spreen said when he interviewed for this position about 7 years ago, we may be better than we actually think we are. We may be our own worst critic, but I think most of us have to deal with that every morning when we get up and look in the mirror and we think about, we are kind of our own best friend and we're our own worst enemy. We're our own biggest critic. One of the things that the External Review Committee talked about was they related back to the fact that we as a department have to make some decisions about what we want to be in the future. If you go back to our determining our destiny, that's some strategic planning that we did as a department back in '96. You look at the 2003 PhD review that our department did. You look at continuing documents, the stuff in 2006 that we did, the review we did for Dr. Marano, who was the dean at the time. You look at the most recent document, the external review, the internal review we did in the winter, the external review that we did in February. There is this concern that we don't have a real unified vision. If you go back and read some of the academic literature in our profession, and I went back and found some stuff that James Bonin wrote back in the late 90s and some stuff that Ed Hsu wrote in the early 90s and referred to stuff that was happening in the 80s and the 70s, it's not uncommon. It's pretty consistent across our profession that we have a lot of differences in opinion in about how we decide where we're going, what our purpose is, and what we do. We need to make progress. We need to agree to work together to improve ourselves, but we're not always going to agree on everything. If we think a little bit about the external review and some of what came out of the external review, and I'm not going through all of the things that were in that document because there were a lot of pages there and a lot of strengths and a lot of weaknesses, and I'm just going to summarize a few. We have nationally recognized, or we have a large undergraduate program. It's nationally recognized for its size and for its quality. We have a reputation. We have strong ag economics and agribusiness degrees. We have a nationally recognized teaching faculty. We've got folks that have won not just university, but regional, national awards. We've got a really good faculty, and we pride ourselves, the external review team gave us credit for the fact that our faculty teach a lot of those classes. Students get an advantage of having faculty, and a lot of times senior faculty teaching those classes that can bring a lot of experience to the classroom. We have a highly regarded advising program. I think our advisors do a good job. We provide enrichment opportunities with clubs, competitions. Our teams have done very well in competitions in regional and national events. We provide travel and study abroad opportunities for our students, and those are things that are priorities. But we have some things to consider. We have to think about whether or not we can maintain quality at the current size. We've been here before. In the early 2000s, we saw some decline in budgets. We saw a decline in teaching FTEs. And we made a strategic decision at that time to shrink the size of our undergraduate program to match up more with our teaching FTEs, with the folks that we had that were in the classroom. And we may need to think about that again. If we want to be and maintain that quality, we may have to think about how many undergraduates we can handle. Or if we're going to maintain them or keep that many, we're going to have to think about how we can do it in a more efficient manner. We do have some opportunities for graduate student teaching, but as the faculty has discussed, as I've heard the administrative folks over graduate programs and undergraduate programs discuss, we need to make sure if we're going to give graduate students opportunities that they're prepared and ready for those, that it'll be a good experience both for them, which should be important from their ability to go out and find teaching jobs, to have some experience, but also we've got students that pay a lot of money to come here, and we need to make sure that the people that we put in the classroom are prepared and ready. We've got good graduate students, we just need to make a good matchup on that. We've had graduate students, adjuncts teaching just about every semester for years, and for the most part, we have really good experiences. And so there are some opportunities there. If you look at the Action 2015 Education First document that was referred to in the external review, you'll notice that it talks about some targeted opportunities. We've got folks that are faculty that Fred has been working with folks to put together some stuff to go to the administration to provide additional funding for some high impact learning and some advising support. And as long as we can provide good evaluation information back about the impact of that and the value that it's having, we can probably we can maintain some of that in the short run and maybe build on those opportunities. We have a large graduate program. It's nationally recognized for its size, both at the MS and at the PhD levels. We have strong ag economics and agribusiness master's degrees. We have a nationally recognized graduate faculty that are good researchers, good teachers. They provide some good experience for those students. They're good publishers. There are good opportunities, but there are some things that we need to think about. Again, can we have the quality we want at this kind of size? I think it's more of an issue for us at the PhD level, and that came out in the external review document. When you get too large, you start to run into issues. with graduate student advising or mentoring. Who's going to chair committees? Who's going to be on committees? Does everybody have time to make those commitments and really do what's needed to be done to help students develop their career and move on to the next phase? We have funding issues. Some of that can impact when we're trying to bring in students. Can we bring in the best students? Are we making the best offers? Are we competitive with other universities? It can impact publication output. If we've got too many students, we can't manage them all well. They may not be working and generating enough publications. They may not be moving through the pipeline fast enough. That'll impact job placement. Lack of jobs impacts how fast they move through the system. When I was a graduate student in Illinois, Jim Roush, who was the associate head for graduate programs, continued to tell me I needed to make sure that I got done in a fairly rapid pace, and I didn't. But in Illinois, it took me about 4 years from start to finish, and that's probably slower than it should be. But Illinois Roush was really a stickler for that because he said there is a correlation between how fast students finish their PhDs and move on to jobs and how productive they are in their career afterwards. And he said because of that discipline and that motivation, and it carries through to their career afterwards. So if you want your students to get good jobs, getting them done quickly and getting them through the system and accomplishing the things that they need to accomplish helps them find better job placement. They also had some pretty strict restrictions on how long students were allowed to be on funding. And even if they were on research funding, they'd tend to cut them off. That didn't work real well with some of the research folks that were funding students that were now being more productive in publishing, but it did help push people through the system. Overall, the department is considered to be strong. We have one of the larger ag econ programs in the country. It's highly respected. We have senior faculty and highly respected senior faculty, promising junior faculty, relationships with the business school that are a credit to us, the Intercollegiate Faculty of Agribusiness, strong undergraduate master's programs, and a nationally respected extension program. Things to consider, we still have some funding challenges. They talked about our loss of earmarks. I think most of the folks that had earmarks are consistently working to find other sources of funds, and we'll move forward with that. That's not something we can't get over, but it is a challenge. Current and future faculty turnover is an issue. We've got salary issues. We've got the age of some of our very productive faculty is getting closer to retirement for some of them. We've got to think about where we are. We've had some new faculty or younger faculty leave. We have some PhD program issues that we've already discussed. And we have to think about our priorities and where we want to be. I'll kind of go from there, kind of a little bit more towards my vision and my administrative philosophy. Kind of how I coordinate a lot of activities as the extension associate head, and I would think of working in a similar manner with the administrative team and with the support staff in the department head's office, is providing leadership through service to the faculty, the staff, to students, to clientele, figuring out what the roadblocks are, the hurdles, what the requirements are, helping faculty work through that process, making things streamlined so that we can be productive. Our faculty shouldn't spend more time than they need to meeting those kinds of requirements because they're building teaching programs, building research programs, building extension programs, and that's what I want them spending most of their time on. I want to encourage input from faculty, from staff, from students about a shared vision and goals. We probably need to do some strategic planning, and I know when I say that everybody goes, ick, but we need to think about where we're headed, and we need to get input from everybody. If we're going to move forward, one of the issues that we need to think about is, are we a bunch of individuals, or are we going to be a team? And if we're going to be a team, we need to respect one another. We need to respect what each other does. We need to figure out how to work together better. A lot of folks already work together. We have a lot of teaching and research faculty who work together. We have some who don't work together as much as they could. Working together is a little bit like when you're friends. You know, most of us all came here from someplace else. How'd you stay in touch with your friends when you left home? Did you wait for them to call you, or did you call them? If you've got some ideas, go talk to your coworkers. Don't wait for them to come to you. We need to respect staff. We need to respect our students. They're a part of our program. I want to build a reputation of an expectation of clear communications. I know there are some things that you can't talk about right away. They're in the process of negotiating on positions or counteroffers, or this last year when we had a reduction in force. You can't just broadcast for everybody what's going on as it's going on. But at some point you need to kind of bring people along. Maybe first the other people that are involved in specific projects, but eventually continue to communicate to the department. You don't want anybody to feel like they're lost in the woods and not being kept in the loop. I think it's important to advocate for the department, both in the university, at the college level, across the university, across the profession, with our former students, extension clientele, with commodity and industry leaders. And this is not important just from the standpoint of what we do day to day, but it's how we get our funding. It's how we get our future funding. It's how we build relationships with people. We need to make sure that we don't keep our good work and our good outcomes a secret. Ed Smith always tells us in Extension we're the best kept secret in the state. People don't know who we are a lot of times. Even if they see what we've done, they don't necessarily know who to give credit to. We need to make sure we've done a better job in recent years of submitting our faculty for awards, of submitting former students for awards. The stuff that Ed Reister does with the Ty Tim Awards is good for our department. There are other things that we need to do. I spend some time as the associate head going through newsletters, going through market information. When I find quotes from our extension folks where they've been quoted in a news release, they've done something for, Outlaw said he was talking to the Wall Street Journal this morning, or I see somebody on a newscast, I send something back to my department head, to extension associate head, or to the dean to let them know what we're doing and what we're accomplishing. And it's important for us to continue to do that, and to let industry know what we're doing, and our legislators. We have an effective administrative and committee structure at this point in time that allows for the delegation of some duties. This is a large department, and it requires some delegation of duties. A department head isn't going to manage everything by themselves. I think the A-team structure, the way it's set up, is a good idea. Having several associate heads, a leader of research, chair of the intercollegiate faculty. We've got a system of about 21 committees. We rotate people on and off of that. Dr. Nichols has done that for years, figuring out those assignments. Some of our committees may need to be restructured. And I think from our internal review, SAC mentioned the fact that they aren't really much of a staff advisory committee anymore. It's more social. Well, if they need to have more of an ear of the department head, then maybe we need to repurpose that committee a little bit. We hire good quality people. We spend time trying to find the best people to put in positions. They need to be given a degree of flexibility to develop their programs. I don't intend to micromanage people. There are things in the department that need to be done, teaching assignments, extension, and research, specific programmatic areas. But give people some leeway to develop their programs. You're hiring good people that you want to have some ability to do what they think they can do best. The department has a strong history. If we talk about funding for a minute, with its centers providing a focus for our research, extension, and industry interactions. I think we need to continue along those lines. The mission and the focus of the centers continues to evolve and change along with departmental needs, changing clientele needs. The Policy Center doesn't do now quite what the Policy Center did 10 years ago. You've moved more into biofuels. You've moved more into other things. You still do a lot of work for legislature. The Market Research Center is turned into AFCERC, and it's repurposed itself and has kind of a different vision. And I envision the centers continuing to move that way. The loss of earmark funds means, again, some rejiggering and shuffling. We've got that changing structure, but I think we've got some additional opportunities there as well. The centers have been important to the graduate programs, providing research experience, industry contacts, publication opportunities. Now, so I know sometimes a lot of the work that y'all do can't be published necessarily, and there's a nature of things happening quickly and getting stuff out, but there are some opportunities there, and there are some good opportunities for graduate students, and I would hope we could keep graduate students involved to some extent. I think we have some opportunities with endowed chairs. We have some. Our most recent one was the Buffett Chair. Dr. Price will be coming back to the department relatively soon. The last chair before that was the dairy chair that Dr. Capps holds. If you look at some other universities around the country, they have more endowed chairs. We need to look at what other people are doing in other departments here on campus, other universities, and find out if there's some things that we can do to maybe generate an increase in the amount of endowed chairs that we can have. We may need to see if there's some kind of incentive system we can provide for faculty to help with that. There are additional opportunities / challenges. We all know that state and federal dollars have been relatively flat. It doesn't appear things are going to be growing in the near future. So we've been dependent for a long time on outside funding, on grants and contracts. We'll continue to be more dependent on those grants and contracts. As we've lost earmarks, people are thinking about ways to find additional funding. One-year contracts are always difficult to deal with. We've seen some push from the dean's office looking at and from the college or from the university level looking at more of a grand challenge and looking at larger issues. When we look at NIFA and AFRI, those are largely looking at larger projects, multi-year funding. A lot of those are multidisciplinary, multi-institution projects. We've participated in some. We probably haven't played as big a role in some of those as we'd like to play, but I think there are still some opportunities there. I think it's important for the department to have a little more coordinated effort in helping faculty develop increasing long-term relationships with industry, with organizations. Dr. Salen, Dr. Jones have done some work in bringing in more industry funding to help with the agribusiness program. I think that we need to continue to work as a department. Some of our faculty have been good over the years at finding things that industry needs. We've got clientele out there that want our analytical capacity. They can provide us some funding. It's interesting, as budgets are shrinking in a number of places, folks are turning to us and saying, can you do some things for me? We're getting more opportunities, and I think we'll get more opportunities in the future. The more short-term opportunities are nice, the more longer-term relationships we can build stability and funding. And if we can coordinate some of those, I think it would be a good thing. We need to build better relationships with our students. And I know the department's worked on it in the past. We send out newsletters. We try to keep touch. We've got a big department. We send out a lot of students to potentially good jobs. Our graduates 1 or 2 years out may get a phone call asking for money at the middle of dinner hour, but that's not how you develop donors over time. We need to stay in touch with them. We need to make them feel like they're a part of our community. And 30 or 40 years down the road, when they're the head of an organization or they've been successful as an entrepreneur, they've got more resources, they're more willing to come back. We had some discussions the other day on the extension side of a former faculty member, not of this department, but in the college, who had actually wanted to refer to a publication we had from I think it was the early 1970s. Dr. Nichols was one of the few people that even remembered who the faculty member was, and we were actually able to find, Rebecca Dudensing, it was tied to community economics, we were actually able to find the publication, working with AgCom, and provide that back to the Development Foundation folks who are trying to work on building something that might turn into an opportunity for us. Now, that's a former faculty member from the college who's in their 90s. It's hard to stay in touch with people because we have transient lifestyles. We move from job to job. But we need to do what we can to build those relationships over time, because if we really want those kind of donations, it's got to happen over, you have to build that development over, that relationship over time, and work with the Development Foundation to build those opportunities. I've been talking for about 30 minutes, and I'll try to wrap up with these last couple of slides. For over 17 years, I worked as an extension economist, kind of as the grain marketing and policy person. I participated in the development of some award-winning extension programs. Master Marketer received not only awards in the college or in extension in the university, but nationally as well. Our farm assistance group has done very well. It requires teamwork. I think that's something that I can bring to the department head's job, is building teams and working with teams. The things that I've won awards on, if you look on my wall, I think there's one individual award. Everything I've got is team awards because I work with other people in our faculty. It takes a commitment to work with programs that are going to be sustained over a long period of time. I've had to work on securing grants and contracts, building industry relationships, and I think that's important for our department head. Evaluation of programs. Didn't talk about our external review and their comments about our evaluation of our programs. We're just really getting started on that on the teaching side. We've been evaluating a lot of our extension programs, maybe not in the same way, but for a lot of years, trying to coordinate some of that activity. We've actually had some publications in the last year, and we have a staff paper, a faculty paper from this last year, and Xi Ming and a graduate student helped a bunch of the extension guys. And we've got something submitted from Master Marketer that looked at about the first 10 years of evaluation data and looking at the impacts. And I think some of those kinds of things as we move forward will be important for our department, because we're going to continue to have to justify why we get the funds that we get. As the extension associate head, and I'll wrap this up in just a couple of minutes, I've spent about 7 years in that position. I've been on the department's A team during that period, administrative team during that period of time. I've provided administrative supervision for the extension unit, the program unit. We have a large extension unit. It's a pretty good sized chunk of the department's faculty. We've also got program specialists, extension associates, and so I've gotten, now, when I say I provide the administrative supervision for those folks, the department head's in charge of the department. I don't do anything as the associate head for extension without running it through the department head and making sure when we turn in evaluation stuff, when we turn in quarterly reports, and I know some of you probably come to faculty meetings once in a while and you see me hand out a 2 or 3 page thing of here's our accomplishments for the last quarter, some of the things that we've done. I send those to Dr. Nichols. I clear those with Dr. Nichols before I send them to Extension Administration. I think it's important for us, again, to keep that information coming out. Dr. Nichols has always appreciated me giving it back to the faculty, even though sometimes it may not be something you necessarily are that interested in. You get an idea of what the extension faculty have been up to. We probably need to do a little bit of that on the other side, making sure that the extension people really know what our research faculty are involved in. Dr. Dunn, when you first came here, I had you come in and talk to our extension group at one of our monthly Meet Me conferences. Now, a lot of what you were interested in didn't necessarily match up with a lot of what they were doing, but some of that may change over time. There may be a reason that you and Dr. Park need to work together on some things that we've been talking about recently, and we need to make sure that everybody's aware. We are a big department. Everybody doesn't know what everybody else does. We usually assume everybody knows, I assume everybody knows what I'm doing, but part of the reason I'm standing up here now is because a lot of people in the department don't know what I do. And I have to spend a little bit of time explaining that. I've been involved in prioritizing extension positions, looking at new hires. When we have retirements, when we've had faculty leave, where do we want to put extension positions? Do we want to put them in extension in district offices, on campus? Do we need to reprioritize some areas? The department head has to do that. Management of our extension budget. When you're given a $3+ million budget at the beginning of the year on the state and federal dollars plus grants and contracts, and you're told make the teaching or the extension portion of this, the state and federal money, hit zero on August 31st. That always makes June, July, and August a little bit of a crunch to make everything balance out. So I've spent some time, I've got some experience with that. Oversight of grant and contract activity within the extension unit, conducting annual performance evaluations on the extension faculty. The teaching research faculty know that you go through your evaluations with Dr. Nichols every year. On the extension side, I do those with Dr. Nichols on the extension faculty. We have an extra form or two that we have to use on the extension side, and I'm responsible for making sure that that stuff gets put into great jobs and gets moved forward. We actually had to deal with great jobs a bit before now all the rest of our faculty do, but we're all continuing to move more and more towards that kind of documentation. Conducting annual performance evaluations on program specialists, selected staff, coordination of monthly and annual planning meetings, planning conferences, trying to keep our people together. Part of the reason that we have those monthly meetings in our extension group is about half of our faculty are off campus. If you don't get together once in a while and talk about what each other's doing, people don't know what each other's, what their coworkers are doing. Sometimes somebody's working on something that somebody else could use, and they don't know they're doing it. So we spend some time talking about what's going on. We talk about what administratively we have to accomplish. And we haven't had a planning conference for a couple of years because of budget purposes, budget cuts. This year we're going to have one here in town, and PAR's already talked to me. I know 2 or 3 research teaching faculty have talked to PAR. A couple of people have talked to me. We probably need, and Dr. Park is involved in chairing the planning committee, and I've talked to him a little bit. We need to figure out a way that maybe we can get some of the teaching research and the extension faculty together for a little while if we're going to get all the extension people here in town. I coordinate oversight on monthly reporting. On the extension side, we have to do monthly reports. The quarterly reporting, the highlights that go in. Dealing with the extension strategic plan on the revisions and the annual reporting. We all don't like to report a lot of stuff, but it ends up being important because that's some of the same information that I use when I participate with the department head each year in our department's annual review with the dean and the directors. And I hope Dr. Sams may be able to tell you yes or no, whether or not we've provided some good information. I know there have been times on the extension side that some of the stuff that I provided went over quite well. One of the things that happened this year was pretty much at the end of our annual review, Dr. Lunt kind of got everybody's attention and talked to Dr. Nichols and complimented Dr. Nichols on the fact that he had turned in a set of about 30, maybe a little over 30 different impact statements on research programs from our department. And the fact that he'd been able to put those in information that he was sending to the chancellor. So it's important for us to be able to kind of coordinate some of that kind of information. I don't want faculty to have to gather all of that themselves, and that's part of what the department head needs to be able to do is coordinate some of those activities.